Good day, everyone. This is Patrick from EasyFX Code Trading System, and this is Saturday, the 18th of February, 2023, and this is the weekly technical analysis for the Euro, the cable, and the Aussie dollar for the 4th week of February. And all the majors price action look the same, and in contrast with the US dollar index. And it's wider than the previous week because of the CPI data and PPI as well from the US. Let's begin with the Euro, where although it's still a fairly narrow range, it has widened up and did swing up to 200 pips for the week. And initially, it did attempt to bounce and find support from the daily 55 EMA, and it was attempting to climb up higher until the US CPI data came out, and it was unexpectedly higher than expected at 64 or 6.4, sorry, versus the expectation of 6.2. Market was expecting a further dip and decline in the inflation, but however, it did come up higher, so they spoiled their momentum for all the majors to push up higher, and it was pushed back down for the next couple of days with US retail sales also higher than expected, and then the PPI data on Thursday also confirmed a higher value in along with the CPI, so that caused an impact on the other majors on trying to climb up higher against the US dollar. So the US dollar did manage to recover somewhat, and that drove all the other majors down back into support. And however, on Friday, the Euro did manage to recover back after dipping below the daily 55 EMA and came back neutral for the week, back to the 107 round figure. So after an attempt to drive higher, it fell back and then came back to neutral for the week. Let's take a look at the weekly time frame, and yes, it closed as almost a doji for the week. A small spinning top, but it still looks bearish, and it happened to be supported by the weekly 55 EMA. That's where it got stopped, got blocked, and then bounced back up on the Friday. Okay, and this week there's another key US data coming out. That's the PCI, and that's towards the end of the week. For the Eurozone, there's just the flash PMIs and the ZEW economic sentiment reports. So this looks potentially could be another range again for next week until towards the end of the week. It could, depending on the result of the PCI figure, which is expected to be at 0.4%. We'll see if it's going to be higher, just as the CPI. If it is higher than expected, then that's going to give a trigger for the majors to break their support levels. So that's going to be critical right to the end of the week. You have to wait till the end of the week for the data to come out. So at the moment, this is still a interim support at the daily 55 EMA. And the next support is at the 105 round figure with the daily 200. EMA climbing up. And the interim resistance is at the 138 extension, just below the 108 level, about 107.70. All right. So we'll contrast this with the US dollar index to see whether it did attempt to recover after the US CPI data, and to contrast this with the euro. Now here's the US dollar index, the DXY. And let me expand this slightly. And initially, it started with a bearish move on the Monday and was dipping lower back down to the 38-Feb retracement, and until the US CPI data came out and it was higher than expected. This gave support and US dollar managed to bounce back up. Continued on Wednesday with better than expected retail sales figures, and on Thursday as well with the PPI. Continue to drive all the way higher until it hit the 78.6 retracement, and that's where it pulled back lower back to the daily 55 EMA. So it looks like it stayed neutral for the week. We switch to the weekly time frame, and it's sitting just below the, actually right at the weekly 55 EMA. It's a doji, small spinning top, and still looking bullish. So it could still continue and test the 78.6 again. And if it's a really strong bounce, then it could eventually come up to retest the 105 round figure. So it depends on mainly the PC price index on the Friday towards the end of the week. And this is basically an inverse relationship with the other major pairs, and does contrast with them. Back to the daily time frame. So this interim resistance, we can move it up to the daily 200 and the 78.6 with retracement. Major resistance up at the 105 round figure. And we could move some of these support levels, move it up here, and the interim support at the 103, where the 50-Feb retracement is. Okay. So yeah, it was on its way down initially, but the better, higher than expected, the CPI figure drove it back up all the way until it hit the 76 retracement. Then ended up neutral for the week, just waiting for next week's news. See whether there's further evidence of potential higher rate hike or an extended rate hikes for next couple of months. Okay, let's move back to the other major pairs. Let's move on to the cable. And it's a very similar pattern to the euro. And it did attempt to push up higher from the Monday and until the US CPI data came out, and that stopped the advance. And that pushed it all back down below this trend line and below the 120 round figure. That's a very important round figure. But then found support and managed to climb back up to stay above the trend line. So recovered on the Friday, as with the other major pairs. And we just take a quick look on the 4-hour time frame. That's where during the US session on the Friday last night, that's where it managed to recover and climb back up to neutral again for the week. And that's closed as a doji for the week, and it was blocked as well. In this case, it's the weekly 55 at resistance compared to the weekly on the euro. It was the support, and it did attempt to drop to the 38 Feb, but did not reach it. So that's still the interim support level. And below that will be the 50 Feb retracement if it does dip lower. And now there's a daily 200 and the 55 EMAs are all bunching up along at the 21 Fib retracement area. So that's interim resistance zone. All right. So likewise, cable is also exposed to the PCE price index on Friday. And Tuesday, there's PMIs, flash PMIs across all the economies. So we'll see if it's able to break through the interim resistance or just consolidate until the Friday news. And if it's also potential fear that the Fed could continue to raise interest rates with the higher than expected CPI. And then there's further concern that instead of continuing at the 0.25, it could move to a 0.5% increase in the meeting next month. So if US dollar does break out higher, then there's the concern that the pound could dip lower, back down into this support area at the 38 Fib retracement. All right. Let's move on to the Aussie dollar. And also similar price action. And it's still finding resistance at the 70 round figure. Managed to find support. It's a critical support here at the previous swing high and at the round figure of 68. And it's at the moment it's still holding at above this interim support where the daily 200 EMA is. And for the week, it's spinning top with a bearish close. So with all the other major pairs, it is in danger of dipping lower if the PCE price index is higher than expected, and or could test further support. And on Tuesday, there's also the RBA monetary policy meeting minutes, which will be key for the Aussie dollar. So they did raise interest rate a couple of weeks ago, but we'll see whether the minutes show any discussion on how many more rate hikes there will be and where the potential terminal rate is going to be. All right. So we'll see how the US dollar price action is going to be for this coming week and how it will impact the other major pairs. And do check out my other videos on spot gold and dollar yen. And have a safe week and a good trading week. And cheers for now.